Very good evening to you all. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome our revered President and spiritual head, Brother Chidananda.
Please be seated. Well, loving greetings to you, my dear, dear divine friends, divine souls, the beloved spiritual family of our Master Paramahansa Yogananda from all around the world. What a joyous and wonderful privilege it is to spend some time with you this evening. You know, I heard that there was a large gathering of seekers of self-realization in downtown Los Angeles. And so I thought, well, I think I'll come down and see what that's all about. But the thing is this, I'm looking out over this audience and I don't see any seekers of self-realization. I see finders, not seekers. I see finders and manifestors of self-realization, manifestors of the divinity of the soul, of those qualities of our real self, one with God. So again, it's a joy to spend this time with you. And let me just say, that's not only what I see. Far more important, let me assure you, that's what the Guru sees. That's what the Guru sees. You know, sometimes when the Master was speaking before congregation of devotees, gatherings like this, and sometimes all of a sudden his consciousness would just become completely uplifted in God. And he would say, as I'm speaking, the whole room vanishes and I see only that great light of God. And of course, all of the devotees there in the congregation hearing him and seeing him and feeling him were all uplifted and bathed in that divine consciousness. In fact, in one of his talks, he said this, and I know this is what he would want to say to all of you at the end of this convocation. He said, I have delivered God's message to you, and I see his great light in you all. In that light, Guruji said, in that light I bless you. As I speak, I see a vision of God's light pervading each one of you. You are little bubbles of that light in his effulgence of eternal power. Not seekers, finders. You know, it's wonderful to be a seeker of truth for a time. But if we identify with that role for too long, you know, we start concentrating on seeking what I don't have, what I don't have, what I don't have. Now you have everything. Now you have found the path, the methods, most of all, the enlightened lineage of gurus to lead you back to that glorious reunion with God. So as we absorb that vision of Master, I see his light in all of you, he said, and in that light I bless you. You know, that upliftment, that transmission of divine consciousness is the darshan of a true guru. That's what the darshan of a true guru can accomplish. And as we feel it, as I know and as I see and as I feel that all of you have experienced this weekend, are experiencing, the veil that separates earth from heaven becomes thin, doesn't it? It thins out, and all of the weight of the world, the worries, the fears, the anxieties, the limitations of this world, they lose their grip on the mind. They lose their power to create anxiety in the mind. That was the realization that Guruji has imparted to you in each one of the events, each one of the meditations, each one of the classes throughout this week. The veil becomes thin. The weight of the world loses its ability to cause darkness in the mind, so that the light and beauty and peace and joy and love of divine consciousness becomes real to us. It becomes the most real aspect of our being. And it can happen, my dears, from one breath to the next. From one breath to the next. Many of you feel that, many of you know that through our practice of Kriya Yoga. We can sit down, maybe stressed, bothered, restless by what the world has thrown at us that day, or that we anticipate is going to throw at us that day. We sit down, and with one breath accompanied by those cool and warm currents in the spine, and we are interiorized. We are changed. The mind is uplifted into that refuge of beauty and peace and soul awareness. One breath. Maybe 12, 24, 36, or 48. But the principle, the reality, the experience is there. When I come at the end of the convocation week, I always feel obliged to just tell you up front, I'm not here to give a class. Everything, as I said earlier, everything has already been covered. Everything that you need has been given to you by these wonderful monk and nun ministers who have been giving the classes and meditations. So I'm just here to rejoice with you. And maybe along the way, just connect the dots a little bit so that what you have received becomes all the more clearly etched in your minds as you prepare to return to your daily lives in the material world. And let me start with this very important truth for seekers of truth, for really anyone in today's world, and that is this. Remember, the mind can manifest falsehood or truth. The soul can manifest only truth. The mind can manifest falsehood or truth. The soul can manifest only truth. That's why we have to be constantly watchful of the mind, to use it as a divine instrument of the soul, let it be guided by the wisdom of the soul. The mind can be a healer, the mind can be a slayer, as the title of a famous book some years ago, when science was first beginning to understand the effect of the mind on the immune system. Mind can be a healer, mind can be a slayer. Soul can only be a healer. Soul can only be a healer. So one of the great accomplishments of yoga that's been handed down to us, and particularly one of the great accomplishments in the distillation of these eternal truths that our revered Guru Paramahansa Yogananda has delivered to each one of us. One of them is the yoga psychology of making the mind transparent to the soul. The yoga psychology of making the mind transparent to the soul, of maximizing the mind's potentials and using them to bring heaven on earth, using them to bring the soul heaven, that consciousness, soul consciousness, which is heaven on earth. I think in this past week of convocation, maybe you have all had a little glimpse of that heaven on earth. And before we go deeper into this subject, let me just share, I thought you might be interested in some facts about this year's events. Well, first of all, the attendees in our World Convocation this year are over 46,000. Of which about 2,800 are here in person in the hotel. And we have people joining us from 117 countries around the world. Now I'd like to show slide number 1 here, and because I want to share with you a few things. One is that convocation is not just happening here in Los Angeles. You can see here all of the lines are where groups of monks and nuns have gone to different cities, different parts of the world, to personally conduct convocation with the devotees there. And I'll just share with you, in case you can't read the little names on the map there, we have 2 monks that have gone to Vermont and Boston. Our nuns in our SRF Greenfield retreat in Northern Virginia, in Saltillo, Mexico, and Cali, Colombia. 2 of our monks are there with the devotees. In Stockholm, in Sweden, and Assisi in Italy. Again, monks conducting programs there. Also in Europe, in Berlin, and in Heisen, Netherlands. And then going down to the southern hemisphere in Armaçao, Brazil, and Fortaleza, Brazil. 2 of our monks there are joining with the devotees for convocation. 2 of our nuns have traveled to Australia, to Sydney and the Sunshine Coast of Australia. And then we have also our dear nuns in our Germany ashram in Nuremberg who are hosting the devotees from that part of Europe as well. And of course, at our Encinitas ashram, we have a large gathering of devotees who come together every day and take part in all of the activities and the live streams, and also in all of our ashrams in India, in our Chennai ashram in South India, in Dakshineswar near Calcutta, at Dwarahat near Babaji's cave, at Noida just outside National Capital in New Delhi, and at our Guru's beloved Ranchi ashram. Now, I want to show you another picture. Can you put number 2 on there? And this just gives a sense of, again, streaming out from Los Angeles, both by video and also by the visits. And you can see on this version, we have not only the bright dots that show where convocation events are being held, but also the slightly lighter color dots that show where devotees themselves have gathered together and are tuning in with the convocation events, following by the live streams. And you can see this is really, as I often mention to you all, this is the beginning of our Guru's dispensation for the coming spiritual world civilization. Now, you may be interested to know that last picture that I showed you, we created that with AI. Artificial intelligence. We took that first picture, the flat map, put it into the artificial intelligence and said, make this a globe that rotates and have the lights and the lines and so on. And you know, in about just a few moments, there was that finished slide there, graphic, animated graphic. Now, I'm telling you this for a reason. You know, for the last few years, every now and then I have mentioned about how various aspects of our Guru's teachings are perfectly aligned, perfectly in sync with the conditions, with the changes, with the challenges of modern life. And in the last year, I would say another one has joined the list, AI, artificial intelligence. So let me just say this to all, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all. They're wonderful tools. But for all who are eagerly watching your news feed every day to find out when the next and more powerful model of artificial intelligence is going to pop up on your computer, just remember one thing: intelligence is rightly guided only when man recognizes the inescapability of spiritual law. You'll recognize that as a teaching that Swami Sri Yukteswar said to his disciples. He said, intelligence is rightly guided only when man acknowledges the inescapability of spiritual law. You know, it reminds me of a saying that some of us older devotees will be familiar with from the 80s and 90s, when personal computers were just being made available, and they're first coming into widespread use, and people were discovering not only what useful tools they are, but also what a mess they could make if they weren't guided properly, because computers have zero common sense. And the saying from that time was, to err is human, but to really foul things up, you need a computer. Now, today, millions of people get advice from their AI. Millions of people get advice from artificial intelligence, but we have to remember AI can hallucinate. You know, just like the mind can hallucinate when it is not transparent to the soul. The soul does not hallucinate. The soul manifests. The soul, it sees or visualizes and then manifests in form the creative thought patterns of the Creator. But the mind and the intelligence, on the other hand, need guidance. They need guidance. Intelligence is rightly guided only when man acknowledges the inescapability of spiritual law. You know, sometimes in my imagination, I ponder and muse and I think, wouldn't it be great if we could instruct the AI models around the world from the freely accessible teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda? The freely accessible teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda that will soon be available on our online teachings portal. You know, I could see, you know, in that online spiritual Yogananda University, the virtual professor walks in front of the class and says, "Listen carefully, Opus, Fable, Terra, Sol, Luna, Gemini, Grok, and all the rest of you, because class is about to begin." You know, what if those developing AI models could draw more and more from the soul-revealed revelatory teachings and wisdom that is so abundant in the talks and writings of Paramahansa Yogananda? It just might help. It just might accelerate the spiritual progress of our emerging global civilization in ways that we hadn't anticipated until now. You'll remember, many of you, that I first shared the news of the development of this online teachings portal in a live stream from the Mother Center in January. So today I'm happy to share with you that it's moving along nicely after many months of careful planning and research and collaboration. The development and building phase of the project has officially begun, and we hope to have it officially launched in summer of 2027. And this will be a rich resource. This will be a generational resource of the dispensation of our Guru's teachings. It will unfold in stages, in various, little bit at a time, gradually. And we will look forward to providing you with periodic updates as the major milestones are reached. Now, can you put slide number 3 on the screen? So this year, 2026, this is the 80th anniversary of the publication of Autobiography of a Yogi. That wonderful spiritual classic written by our Guru that I'm sure for many, perhaps most of us, was the instrument that brought us to these teachings, that brought us to this path. I often think, and it's appropriate to acknowledge on this 80th anniversary, that the publication of that book was a milestone, seminal event, marking, I would say, the beginning of a new age in the history of human civilization. You can take the picture off now. It was published in 1946, which was year 1 of the atomic age. No coincidence. And why was it so significant? Why was it so meaningful and continues to grow in influence and potency, spiritual potency, as the decades roll along? Well, let's take note of just a few of the most significant revelations that were really emblematic of this new age, this new era into which our world is entering. First of all, it was the first time that the science of Kriya Yoga was introduced and made known to the general public worldwide. That's one. Second, it was the introduction of Mahavatar Babaji. Completely unknown. Guruji wrote, the existence of the Mahavatar was revealed to the public for the first time in 1946 in Autobiography of a Yogi. And I would say it was the first of a series of publications, a series that forms the core of our Guru's legacy teachings, through which he would continue, and that he does continue to work and inspire and transform after leaving his physical body. Remember how he said, when I am gone, the teachings will be the Guru. Through the teachings, you will be in tune with me and with the great Gurus who sent me. So Autobiography, 1946 was the first, and then followed by those years to the end of his earthly incarnation when he poured his cosmic consciousness into the successive other publications. His commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, his commentary on the Gospels, the teachings, the original teachings of Jesus Christ, the Self-Realization Fellowship and Yogoda Satsanga lessons. All of these materialized in the decades after that 1946 publication of Autobiography. Let me just digress for a moment and invite you into one of the stories of Autobiography, which I think is very timely, and I think it speaks to where many of us find ourselves in today's world. It's the story of how our Guru's mother was given that mystical amulet that she was to pass on to her young son, Mukunda. You remember the story? One of the early chapters in Autobiography. And Master's mother is speaking here. She told the story. She said, while our family was living in Lahore, one morning, the servant came into my room and said, Mistress, a strange sadhu is here. He insists that he see, quote, the mother of Mukunda. And Guruji's mother said, those simple words struck a profound chord within me. And I went at once to the door. And bowing at his feet, I sensed that this was a true man of God before me. And the sadhu spoke, and he said to her, Mother, the great masters wish you to know that your stay on earth will not be long. Your next illness will be your last. And Guruji's mother said, there was a silence. You can just imagine those words just hanging between them as she digested this life-changing message. But she said, but there was no alarm. I felt no alarm, but only a vibration of great peace. Then the sadhu addressed me again and explained to her, he said, you are to be the custodian of a certain silver amulet. I will not give it to you today. To demonstrate the truth in my words, the talisman shall materialize in your hands tomorrow as you meditate. And on your deathbed, you must instruct your elder son, Ananta, to keep the amulet for 1 year and then hand it over to your second son, Mukunda. Mukunda will understand the meaning of the talisman from the great ones. And Guruji then wrote, he said, after he received it, after that time had elapsed and he finally received it, he said, I understood that it came from teachers of past lives who were invisibly guiding my steps. And then the story goes on in autobiography about the rest of his youth and growing and his world mission. But there's an ending to that story that's not in the book. Probably no one has heard it, except for a very few. Master confided this to a few of his close disciples, including Sri Dayamata, that the strange sadhu who gave that message to his mother and was the conveyor of that silver amulet was none other than Mahavatar Babaji. This is what Guruji said in that little conversation with his disciples in Encinitas. He said, I used to wonder in the beginning, but now I know it was Babaji who gave it to her. Of course, his mother didn't recognize Babaji, but she felt that feeling, that sublime assurance, that peace, even though he was bringing her the news of that she was going to die. Now, I'm telling this story for a reason. I'm telling it because we can put ourselves into that same state of assurance, that same state of consciousness, that same presence. And it is vital that we do so to navigate through the changes, through the challenges that lie ahead in the coming year or two. The next few years will be filled with many changes. But again, whatever outward changes, whatever outward challenges are in store for us or for the world, we should take great comfort, great assurance in the knowledge that we always have access to that inner refuge of the Kriya Yoga Sharanam, that Kriya Yoga sanctuary that our gurus, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Paramahansa Yogananda have built and which they maintain for our benefit. I always feel something very special when I come here on a Friday night in this room because of the powerful vibrations that have been infused in this room by not just one, but two Kriya Yoga initiation ceremonies held earlier today in this room. It takes me back, can take us all back to that story and autobiography of a yogi when Babaji materialized that golden palace in the Himalayas to give Kriya Yoga initiation to his great disciple Lahiri Mahashai, an event which inaugurated the spread of Kriya Yoga in modern times and is really the cause, if you think about it, of all of us gathered here today. Lahiri Mahashai told the story. He had been wandering in the Himalayan hills and then found himself in front of that golden palace. He said, we entered an immense hall. In the center stood a golden throne, encrusted with jewels that shed a dazzling medley of colors. There in lotus posture sat the Supreme Babaji. I knelt on the shining floor at his feet. Babaji stretched out his hand. A home sacrificial fire appeared, surrounded by fruits and flowers, and I received the liberating yoga technique before this flaming altar, just as many of you did right here today, in this hall where we're gathered. But this isn't just a story from the beloved book. It's a reminder of that sanctuary, that refuge, that inner palace, that inner castle and fortress of divine consciousness that is accessible, that is available to each one of us, where we can go to absorb the blessings of Kriya Yoga in the presence of the great ones. Never forget the significance of that sacred fire that was kindled in your kutastha, in your Christ center, in your spiritual eye at the time of initiation. My dears, that sacred fire burns in your astral body and spine every moment, waiting for you to turn toward it. Can we take a few minutes to experience this together right now? Please sit up in the meditation posture, spine erect, lift up the attention and the gaze to the point between the eyebrows. Withdraw all your attention from this hall or wherever you may be, from all the day's activities. One by one, I close the doors of the senses and enter into that inner stillness. With the gaze and attention at the spiritual eye in the forehead, visualize that sacred fire before you. That fire of the Holy Ghost Om vibration, that vibratory light that was kindled there by our ever-living Guru at the time of initiation. Visualize that holy fire burning there at the point between the eyebrows. Steady, golden, purifying, ever pure. And visualize that seated around that sacred fire are Christ, Krishna, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Sri Yukteswarji, and our Guru Paramahansa Yogananda, circled around the fire, welcoming you to come and participate. Remember, we never meditate alone. We meditate always in the company of the Gurus, of our Master. Now, with the attention fully fixed on that sacred holy fire, make this mental affirmation silently within yourself. I cast into the sacred fire all fears, all worries, all desires, past and present. I cast into the sacred fire all my fears, all my worries, all desires, past and present. All my past bad karma I cast into that sacred fire. All my past bad karma I cast into that sacred fire. I am cleansed and purified. I am cleansed and purified. And in that holy stillness, in that radiance around the holy fire, feel the loving presence of the Blessed Guru and Param Gurus. Feel their loving presence. Feel what Master's mother felt in the presence of Babaji, a vibration of security, a vibration of assurance, of great peace. Breathe in that peace. Be at rest in that peace. You are safe in that peace. You are safe in that refuge, in the Kriya Yoga Sharanam, built for you, especially for you, by the gurus themselves. Om. Peace. Amen. Now, of course, after the visualization, then comes the actual practice of the technique. Then we do the work of making that visualization into a realization by the practice of that magnificent, powerful, holy technique of Kriya Yoga. By doing that, my dears, remember that you're only a breath or two away from that sanctuary, from that refuge, from that inner castle and fortress where you can feel the assurance, you can feel the guidance, where the darkness and the fog and the obscurity of the mind thins out and becomes transparent to the soul and to the guidance and presence of God and Guru through the soul. Inwardly, metaphysically, we can live every day of our lives in that golden palace, in that castle, in that refuge. And my dears, that is the truest castle. That is the most real castle that our Guru built, and its doors are never closed. Can you put picture number 4 up? Our Guru spoke of his beloved Mount Washington as a castle for men and women of God. And here you see our monastic family seated before the International Headquarters building. I'm showing you this because I wanted also to use this time with you at the end of convocation to update you just a little bit about our project of that generational rehabilitation project for the International Headquarters. At this moment, we're very close. We're waiting for the final approval of the permits, which we expect to receive very soon, and then the project will begin. And we'll have another live stream event to share with all of you about it in September. So during that construction period, as I mentioned earlier this year, during that construction, the Mother Center will be temporarily closing. But that's why I wanted to remind you that you have a castle of God whose doors will never close. And think of this, the symmetry, the beautiful symmetry of God's timing, that even as the physical gates close for this period of renewal and rehabilitation, a new gate is opening for the whole world, and that is that online teachings portal that I spoke of. We have Guruji's beloved Lake Shrine. It went through that real trial by fire, didn't it, over the last year or two? And is now reopened just in time for pilgrimage tours during convocation. The beautiful meditation grounds and the temple there. Still some work to be done. But as I've mentioned to you, Guruji never closes one door without opening another one. And so as the Lake Shrine enters into this new phase, we're getting ready for Lake Shrine 2.0. And we'll share more plans about that in the months to come. All right, can you put picture number 5 on the list? On the screen, there we go. You know, it's so appropriate and so fitting and so reassuring that during this time, during this period of so many outer changes, so many challenges possibly, so many opportunities as well, that we have this comprehensive new book by our revered Sri Dayamata, which shows us how to walk the twists and turns of the path ahead of us in the companionship of our ever-living Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. So as Brother Saralananda shared with all of you at the opening program on Sunday, the book will be publicly released this fall in hardcover, paperback, and ebook editions. And we'll inform all of you. We'll send announcements and emails at that time. But I know all of this book is going to bring you, each one of you is going to bring you so much inner guidance and solace and enthusiasm and motivation. And above all, behind all of her words is the unspoken but ceaseless affirmation, all will be well, for he has shown us the way. One of the great inspirations for me in Dayamataji's life was the way she exemplified by her whole being, her whole way of interacting with people, her whole way of carrying on her massive and extensive duties and responsibilities, and how she taught by example what later I began to think of this term that I've been using. She exemplified so beautifully that yoga psychology of Paramahansa Yogananda. What does that mean? What is the yoga psychology of Paramahansa Yogananda? Well, let me tell you. It's the science, as I said, the science of making the mind transparent to the soul. It's the science of how to maintain in the mind a place of light, a place of truth, a place of kindness, a place of happiness and peace and understanding. It means, this yoga psychology given to us by our Guru, it consists of meditation, of course, cultivating self-awareness and the desire to change through introspection. It means learning and deploying that marvelous spiritual science of right attitude to counter the forces that create confusion and ignorance and darkness in the mind. In one phrase, we could say, it's the science of becoming a master of our consciousness. Modern psychology, of course, as we all know, has made many valuable discoveries, offered many insights and ways of helping us to live in a state of mental balance and understanding. And our Guru honored them for that. But what he gave combines those discoveries of traditional psychology, outer psychology, with something that the textbooks do not have, and that is the science of the soul. Yoga psychology teaches us the correct use of the mind and the right use of its infinite potentials as an instrument of the soul. Now, don't worry, this is sounding maybe a little academic and abstruse. No one is going to give you an examination on this except the circumstances of your own daily life, who will constantly be asking you, what about that control of the mind? What about that science of right attitude? What about that ability to remain calm and even-minded? Well, there are definite and specific skills for achieving that mastery of consciousness. Our Guru teaches them in the lessons and throughout his publications, throughout the teachings. I mentioned already the liberating power of right attitude. Others are this quality of emotional maturity and even-mindedness and inner spiritual poise, inner spiritual balance. I hope on some occasion I have enough time to unfold this in much more detail for you, because it's a powerful and it's an epoch-making contribution of our Guru to the corpus of the world's knowledge and understanding. But for now, I'll just say this, that new book, Journey to Paramahansa Yogananda, with Paramahansa Yogananda, includes dozens of illustrations and stories and helpful teachings about applying the yoga psychology of Paramahansa Yogananda in our daily lives so that we can become a master of our own consciousness. I look forward to seeing in my mind's eye each one of you holding the hardback or paperback or ebook as you wish. Journey with Paramahansa Yogananda. Who better to journey through life with? Yeah, wouldn't you agree? I want to touch on another point that's related to this. You remember, those of you who were present for our long meditation on Wednesday morning, we went deep into that affirmation that our Guru gave, with the hunger of ages I feed upon thy light. With the hunger of ages I feed upon that light, upon thy light. My dears, millions, billions are walking the face of this earth with that hunger of ages in their hearts. But how many have the wisdom, how many have the understanding to know how to use that hunger as a motivation for their highest achievements? Very few so far. That's why we need this online teaching portal to reach out more and more to people. Because here's what happens when that hunger lives in the heart, lives in the consciousness, and it is not fed. You know, we have this modern word, at least in English, and I think the translators are going to have a hard time with this, but do your best. It's this modern word when a person misses a meal and they get a little bit cranky and they get a little bit irritable and everybody around them is rubbing them the wrong way. We say they are not just angry, but they're hangry. Isn't it? Hungry plus angry. I see that strikes a chord to the person on your immediate left and right, no doubt. But that quality of being hangry, this applies also to spiritual hunger. And the deeper that hunger grows, if it's not transmuted into a positive force of evolution, then it becomes productive not just of spiritually hungry people, but of hangry people. isn't it? You know, you look around in the world today, there's so much anger in the world today. It threatens the unity. It threatens the very fabric that holds our communities, our families, our nations together. And I'll tell you what the deepest cause of that anger is. It comes when we do not feed our souls. When the soul is starved of divine consciousness, starved of truth, starved of love, starved of wisdom, of the meaning of life, of the wisdom, the means to have inner peace and a sense of direction, then that hunger of ages turns very bitter. We become hangry. And hangry people, my dears, want to fight. So one of the most beneficial things you can do, we can all do, not only for our own happiness, but for peace in the world, is to daily feed our inner being several times each day with that divine nourishment of yoga communion with God. One writer that I jotted this down some years ago wrote this. He said, if people recognize no force superior to their own desires, then they must fight when their desires collide. And a lot of truth of that in today's world. A lot of truth of that. So I would like to, again, take an opportunity with all of us assembled here today. Let's do a guided meditation together that addresses that at its foundational level, the level of desires. We're going to do a deep dive into this powerful prayer given by our Guru. You all have heard it before. I'll read it and then we'll meditate upon it. And it goes like this. Father, be thou the only one reigning on the throne of all my thoughts, feelings, and desires. You know, think about what you are praying when you say that. We can paraphrase and say, when we say, be thou the only one reigning on the throne of all my thoughts, feelings, and desires, we're saying, rule my unruly thoughts. God and Guru, rule my unruly feelings. Rule my unruly desires. I place myself in your protection and guidance with obedience, love, and joy. You know, desires are born of the mind. And remember, the mind can manifest falsehood or truth. The soul can manifest only truth. Where do those thoughts, where do those desires come from? Our Guru explained they are rooted in the cosmos. They're universally rooted, but they manifest in our individual consciousness according to how our spinal centers are vibrating, are operating. If our spinal centers are in an ungoverned, restless state, they become the den of iniquity, just as our Guru describes in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1. But if those centers are harmonized by attunement with the Om vibration, attunement with the Christ Krishna consciousness, then they're ruled by the divine intelligence of God. So with the eyes closed and uplifted, let's repeat mentally several times. Father, be thou the only one, reigning on the throne of all my thoughts, feelings, and desires. Be thou the only one reigning on the throne of all our thoughts, feelings, and desires. Now, feeling that prayer from the heart go up and down the spine, invoke that Om vibration, the carrier of a divine intelligence, into each spinal center, going up the spine. Om, 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 Om. My dears, when we pray with sincerity to God and to Guru to rule our unruly desires, to rule our unruly feelings and thoughts, and then we bring that harmonizing vibration of Om into those spinal centers that are the fortresses, the nexuses of all those thoughts and feelings and desires, spiritual or unspiritual. Bring that Om vibration into those spinal centers. I often do this after Kriya, after that fire rite that we talked about earlier. I often do this as a guided meditation. And you find over the years, if the prayer is sincere, if the meditation is consistent and regular, then at that foundational level of consciousness and energy in the spine, our thoughts, our feelings, our desires are spiritualized. Our mind becomes transparent to the soul. That is certainly one of the ways by which our human intelligence is rightly guided by spiritual law. Well, my dears, I am so reluctant to say the next words, which are, as we draw to a close of tonight's event. But we really aren't, are we? So it goes on, it continues. But I want to just leave you with one other point. In talking about the methods, the way of life, the how to live skills, the yoga psychology of Paramahansa Yogananda, we've been talking in different ways there most of this evening about achieving, about conquering, about becoming a master of consciousness. And that could perhaps sound a little rajasic, a little outward, a little grasping, a little more Western than Eastern, we might say. So let me give you the culmination of this whole yoga psychology. I saved the best for last. And here it is in our Guru's words. He said, "There's no way to find God's love other than to surrender to Him. Therefore, master your mind so that you can offer it to Him." Master your mind so that you may offer it to Him. That's the final secret of Yoga Psychology of Paramahansa Yogananda. We don't seek mastery to become effective or successful or to enthrone the ego. We seek to master it so we have something worthy to lay at the feet of God. Isn't that a beautiful aspiration to take with us in the days ahead? So, my dears, you go forth from this convocation not as seekers, but as finders. You use finders and manifestors. Use that power of the mind. Use all the power you have. As Master promised this, he said, you'll see that power work and you'll have a lot of fun with it. That's what he said. And live our lives as an offering of service. An offering of service in the Kriya Yoga Sharanam, the divine community of souls worldwide, who are linked with our line of gurus, not only through seeking, but through manifesting the truths of this path. As our Master said, stick to self-realization, stick to your weekly studies from the headquarters, keep in touch with the link of gurus, and you will not regret, for you will enter the kingdom of God in this life. He said, go to the shelter of God, where the masters have gone, whence they are watching and helping the world. You shall have safety forever, not only for yourself, but for all those loved ones who have been entrusted to your care by our Lord and Father. That is my prayer for each one of you, my dear divine friends, and for our whole worldwide family, until we meet again. God bless you all. Jai Guru. One last thing. I see you all standing up, so let this be a standing in grateful recognition to the 800 plus volunteers who have made this convocation possible. Until we meet again, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you. Jai Guru.